The weather is sweet. Good morning, family. Not good morning. Nobody's morning here. We're celebrating. We're celebrating life. So grand rising, because we're rising to a new dawn, a new day. And so let's be excited about that, family. We're just going to sit here for a second and wait for people to join the stream. Get my light on. Rescheduled a couple of times this morning. But ready to go. So let's see. Again, we'll just kind of marinate. I see somebody jumping in now. Like I said, we're going to hang out. We're going to let it air out. Allow a couple more people to get into the chat. Good morning. Good morning, Shoshana. Thank you. Good morning, Michael. I'm glad that y'all are able to join. We're just going to continue to let it air out and just enjoy some Bob for a second. I don't know what's going on with my light. It's a little better. 3 people with us right now. Thank you. Again, Grand Rising. I'm glad y'all are able to join. This morning is going to be amazing. A lot of cool stuff. Some research that was done, a couple of years ago, regarding how amazing we are. Good morning, Theodore Christopher. I'm glad you're able to catch the live. Again, I love these lives. I love that. I love that we can post it and that people can glean from the information down the road. But I do enjoy getting with you, family. Yeah, this lighting is really weird today. Let's see, maybe if I scoot forward, it's a little better. So we'll get going here in just a second. I'm gonna finish getting the rest of my stuff set up. That way I can sit in on try and monitor the chat. I try not to get too distracted by the chat. It happens. Thank you, baby. Yeah, those are pretty amazing. But yeah, a couple of years ago, man, this research was done using what's called, what is it called? Algebraic topology being applied to a model in a virtual brain structure that was created on a computer. And so we're going to be talking about some pretty amazing stuff that they found regarding the way that the brain works, and just a lot of really cool stuff. And so I'm gonna get this screen share up because I'm just gonna go through some graphics while I'm talking about this stuff, and I actually might jump on I don't know, I might just play the audio. I don't want to screen share from YouTube. I found that even when I share just a small amount, from somebody else's YouTube, I tend to get my video removed. And so I'm going to try and avoid doing that today. But I do want to share some of this information about the things that were found via this virtual brain structure created on a computer. These experiments were conducted using live brain tissue, right? And so it's some really cool stuff, man. It really helps point us back to the origins and the inheritance that we have, right? Where we're from and what we've been given, right? A lot of these things that we've been given have been demonized. And we've been told that these things are evil, right? Manifestation, law of attraction, things like that. But if you've seen some of the previous content, you see that I talk about some of these things that are made to be taboo in society and even in the church, especially in church and religious belief systems, and how science has connected what people deem as new age. Really, it's not new age. It's actually old age. It's a lot of the things that I talk about and that science is discovering right now are things that were um, around far before religious structures were made and put in place for the reason, just for the purpose of control. And so, hmm, oh, that's what it is. Still new to this tech, guys. So, but we're gonna jump right in and we're gonna talk about these things because they need to be talked about. We're amazing. Our bodies are amazing, and the things that people that the powers that be have done to try and control the narrative is amazing. And so the neural structure in our body is amazing. The way that it communicates with it helps our body communicate with itself, the organs, the endocrine system, which again, I've talked about in many previous videos how that correlates with our spirituality and our walk, the way we walk, the way that we think, our programming, the way that we can be programmed like computers, and why it's important to um, just going to pull this up so I can monitor it and make sure that everything is good. But there's a great importance in reprogramming ourselves. We got to reprogram ourselves. And when we see that we can reprogram our brains like a computer, it's pretty amazing. It's actually really amazing because we can manipulate this reality in a good way. And so this uh, research um, is called the Blue Brain Project. It's really cool. The Blue Brain Project has recently come up with a model which describes the brain as a structure built by multi-dimensional spaces and constructions. And so that's one of the things that, I know that people might think it's crazy, right? How I talk about different dimensions and how science is proving that there is other dimensions, and how do we access those dimensions? What does it mean spiritually for us? Um, that's what we're here to find out. That's what we're here to learn. That's what we're here learning together. It's one of the reasons why I know that I've been given this mouth to speak and this brain to analyze these things and to um, even just simply connect with source and sharing the information that I share, because I think that one of the things that we need to understand really come out from that understanding and being under these programmings and things that we've been indoctrinated to believe, and understand uh, the energy that we are. Everything in this universe is energy, and it's expressed through motion. Again, go back and check out some of the previous content. It contains a lot of that information regarding that. And so I don't want to beat a dead horse. I just want to continue to teach on how these things affect us and what they mean for the times that we live in right now. Because again, coming out of um, we can just step out and make a new, huh? I will definitely check with the comments in the chat, so please feel free to be active and comment. If you have any questions, again, I'll ask that you put them in all caps, and I'll come back and try and answer to the best of my ability. And if I don't have an answer for you, I'm not going to blow smoke up your rear and try and lead you astray and try and make you think that I know everything. In fact, the deeper you dive into these things, the more that you realize you really don't know anything and you really don't understand or understand as you ought to. And really, when you try to put out uh, this all-knowing self, it does come across as self-righteous when uh, the key to understanding is that we do have all knowledge. We do have access to all knowledge. But when you begin to get puffed up in pride and say that I know that it's only this way, that's where we got the religious dogmas that we have today. And so I'll digress and get back on this um, article regarding this study. This study again was done a couple of years ago, and it helped us to understand our brains better. Might even have given us clues to answering questions like where in our brain memories are made, right? Because again, previous content, I've talked about how DNA stores data, massive amounts of data, much more than even quantum computers, so to speak, can store. And so our brains are much more powerful, even though the powers that be would put it out there that the quantum computer, the D-wave computer, is has the computing power of 7 million or 7 billion brains. Um, it's here's the thing: when you have access to source and you're connected to source, um, you even know the ins and outs of the way that AI is working and the things that are going on today with um, again, the powers and principalities, the rulers of this dark age, what is trying, what they're attempting to do, right? And so I'll have another show regarding neural linking and AI, uh, the way that CERN and CRISPR and all of these other um, I mean, HARP is even influencing these things, and so um, we're going to take a look at these things, the way that our minds create this reality and the way that this reality is a projection, and the way that the minds of men have been manipulated for who knows how many years, how many millions of years, how many hundreds of years, how many thousands of years, how long this cycle has been going on. We're told that there's nothing new under the sun. So does this play out infinitely? Oh, well, I would say that these things do change, regardless of whether you want to use a word like evolve or not. Um, Man changes, and so do the things around us. And so we see a change, a huge shift in humanity right now, in the consciousness of humanity, and in the understanding of who God is and where God dwells, and what Christ meant when he said that the kingdom is within you. You don't need to look here or there. We're not looking for an outward kingdom anymore. We understand where the kingdom is. We understand where the king resides, and we understand the power that the king has given us, his sons and daughters. And so we're going to stand on that, and we're going to learn. We're going to learn about the power that we've been given, that again has been called magic or taboo or new age, and begin to understand that these gifts are just like the talents written of in the Bible, right? That it says that God gave, or that the master gave his servants these talents, and one went out and he profited um, crazy from it. And when the master came back, he presented everything, his profits, everything, and he was rewarded well. The second one, he went out and he was more safe with it. He didn't take as many risks, but he profited off of it. He was rewarded well. The third guy, man, he buried the talent in the ground because he was afraid to even go and put it in the bank, that he might lose it in the bank, even that something might happen with it in the bank. Um, and it says that he went away with nothing. He you know he buried and he wasted that talent. And we've been given a talent, um, by our creator. And that talent, when we begin to understand the way that talent, the inner workings of these talents and how to use them for the purpose of the kingdom within us, the unselfish kingdom based on agape love, that is charity, right? Um, my wife and I were looking into that, and um, the definition of agape love, and because the gentleman said that there was no unconditional love in the Bible, and I say yes and no, because the um, let me see if I can find it. I think I had it here somewhere. Um, hmm, maybe I didn't save it. But that agape love is infinite love, and it is, I believe it's unconditional, because um, Christ came into the world for the lost, for the sinner, for the broken, for the needy. And so, we just, again, begin to understand how these things work, and not allow people to cause us a spirit of fear, and drive us away from knowing what the Creator wants us to know, right? Um, let me see. I got to get back to my article. I'll put a link to the actual research link as well in this. Um, that'll guide you guys to the research done with this project, the Blue Brain Project. And so the brain, particularly the human brain, is an extremely complex organ, and science is still far from understanding all the intricacies of its complexity. However, a team of scientists working on the Blue Brain Project is now working toward better understanding the brain by using computer models. The most recent model showed the brain to be a structure of multidimensional spaces and constructions. We found a world that we had never imagined. Neuroscientist Henry Markham, the director of Blue Brain Project, as well as professor and or at the EPFL in Lausanne, Switzerland, said, these structures exist in numerous numbers up to the seventh dimension. And I've even read in some of these articles of research that it can go even beyond that, up to the 11th and 12th dimension, right here, guys. And so in the tiniest fleck of our brain, these dimensions have been found. In some areas of the neural network, there were structures present as high as the 11th dimension. These structures or constructions are made when a group of neurons come together to form a click. Each neuron connects to each neuron in the click to create a new structure. As many neurons exist in the brain as do the number of structures. And so I was talking about this in previous content, how, and we're going to talk about biophotonic light in this episode or in this live stream. And so I want us to understand that when we come into new information and we allow it to process, right? When, as it says in scripture, it says that God says, come, let us reason together, right? And so if we reason with God in us, right? If we reason through these things that are presented that challenge our belief systems that we've been indoctrinated with since birth, then it allows new synapses to connect in your neural network in your brain, new neural highways to connect in your brain, and the old structures and actually fall away. Right? It creates a new structure. As it says here, each neuron connects to each neuron in the click to create a new structure. As many neurons exist in the brain as number of structures. And so in each click, the more neurons, the more complex the structure, the more dimensions it consists of. And so this is ascending. See, this is not new age. This is actually scientific proof of ascension right here. As you allow yourself to become more and more in depth uh, in seeking truth, becoming self aware, and knowing thyself from the inside out, judging thyself, not your fellow neighbor, not your fellow man, not the people around you, not looking outwardly, but allowing yourself to pull the plank before you go and try and help your brother with a speck. That creates these new dimensions, these new levels, which people, again, as we look at these things called dimensions, we can look at them as the different levels of the different levels of heaven, right? And the different levels of Sheol, or what people would call hell. And these are accessible and actually play out in a very real way, manifest in a very real way in this realm. And that's why you see this world has been very lukewarm. And so it's been lukewarm. There's been a darkness, but there's also been the light shining in the darkness. And now, in the times that we're in, and the enemy has been allowed to run free. And again, in previous content and future content, we'll talk about who the enemy is and where hell is, right? And who the devil is, who Satan is, who the adversary is, and the beast, the number of the beast, 666, the flesh, and how that flesh is being just to be transfigured, transmuted via knowing the truth. When you know the truth shall set you free. That's what Christ said, right? And he said that we would become like him, that we would be sons of God. We're told throughout, our indoctrination in Christianity that that you would become like Christ, that you're to live like Christ, that's what your aim and your goal is, right? But then all of these dogmatic doctrines of man have come in and twisted the truth of the fact that Christ said that you are God. No, you're not greater than the Father, but you're of the Father. I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. I can do nothing apart from him. And those of you that are seeking truth and have that in your DNA being exposed on a molecular level, on a cellular level, that double helix connected by those strands, the 10 tribes are being found. It's those 10 inactive strands. And they're being activated when you connect these neural links, these new synapses connect in your brain. And I'll digress, because that's one of the exciting parts. I and the Father are one. Exactly. I and the Father are one. And that goes for each and every one of us, Shoshana. That's what Christ said. That's what he came to teach us. He didn't come to be worshipped. And that's what we're doing in the modern church today, right? We're worshiping this man. We're worshiping his meat suit. We're not worshiping in spirit and in truth, as the scriptures tell us. That's what we're supposed to do. That the Father desires those who would worship in spirit and in truth. And so let's get to some more of this truth. I'm really excited to get to the part about the biophotons in our brain, but I want us to understand this part first. So these dimensions, right, are three-dimensional only. If looked at in space, it's just the complexity of the structure and mathematics in calculating these dimensions which are used to name them as higher than 3 dimensions. As Professor C's Van Leeuwen says, points out, multi-dimensions are also used to describe highly functional constructions or systems outside of physics. And so that's another reason why I've been going over so much regarding quantum physics and quantum technology and quantum computing and quantum entanglement and quantum tunneling. And so that will play in as well. And so these they're highly functional constructions or systems outside of physics. Working at KU Leuven, Belgium, Professor Leeuwen, I'm butchering the guy's name, is a reviewer of the study and says that a good example of such a structure is the state of systems in a state space. In state space, the space is described as a union of the various levels of freedom in the system, and the state is the value of freedom afforded to these spaces. And again, so when we look at subatomic particles and atoms and the spaces in between the protons and even between the neuron and the neuron and the proton and even the electron and the vibratory rate that causes the frequency which they're transmitted at and actually transmuted and made into solid matter, right? Platonic solids created this way. And so, but anyway, in between those spaces of the subatomic particles is actually an immeasurable or infinite space. And so it's a paradox that our minds can't even grasp, that in between these subatomic particles that we can't even see, they're so small that we can't even see, is an infinite amount of space. And it comes back to that, what I've said about looking at it this way, that God is the infinite, all, ever expanding source energy of which there is no end. The greatest consciousness that goes beyond creation, right? But it's expanding. This infinite expanse is expanding into a singular point. It's expanding into itself, which is all of us, because that infinite self, that's that point of self that it's expanding into, is then fractalized. Okay, it's broken up into little fractals, and then it's everything that it's perceiving and receiving via the fractal aspect that's been given senses is then being projected outwardly and manifest and created into platonic solids. It's crazy. With an organ like the brain that is so complex, its connections, the researchers aim to compare it to objects that they're comfortable with so that its working can be better understood, says Rand Levi of Aberdeen University, also one of the teams who worked on the paper. He underlines that without the comparison, you would only see a collection of trees or neurons working randomly. Levi said that they mapped the construction with the neural network of the brain with the known universe, thus allowing them to look at it from points of view of multidimensional objects, leading them to understand the brain's constructions and functioning better. A method called as algebraic topology was applied to the model in a virtual brain structure, which was created on a computer, and experiments were conducted on live brain tissue to see the effects. And so again, I think I'm just going to play this audio because I don't want to take any chance of having the replay removed. It's a very short minute and a half, I believe. Let me get that set up. I was prepared to screen share it, but
if you look at a movie of neural activity with neurons spiking here and here and here and here, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to detect any pattern in the firing. But when you look at this pattern of firing through the filter of algebraic topology, different structures emerge in terms of which families of neurons are firing in which order, and then more complex structures when you look at how these different families are related to each other. When one looks at the evolution of such a pattern through time, it gives us a mathematical signature that describes this pattern that was hidden in the seemingly chaotic firing of the network. The big question is, you're looking at the brain after a stimulus, and it has this activity.
You know what? I am just going to go ahead and play this here because there are some important graphics here, and hopefully we don't get flagged.
If you looked at a movie of neural activity with neurons spiking here and here and here and here, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to detect any pattern in the firing. But when you look at this pattern of firing through the filter of algebraic topology, different structures emerge in terms of which families of neurons are firing in which order, and then more complex structures when you look at how these different families are related to each other. When one looks at the evolution of such a pattern through time, it gives us a mathematical signature that describes this pattern that was hidden in the seemingly chaotic firing of the network. The big question is, you're looking at the brain after a stimulus, and it has this activity pattern, and somehow it should be encoding information about what came in and then coming to some sort of decision about what to do next.
So I just want to stop it for a second. We're about halfway through it. Again, I don't want to get flagged. I'm just simply using this with the, in line with the freedom of press and just for information and educational purposes only. My channel is not monetized. I don't look to profit from this information, especially in sharing somebody else's information. The link will be added in the description. And so hopefully we can get through the rest of this video without there being any issue.
I think that we're seeing here is a way of interpreting or visualizing the brain's own code for what it's doing. It processes the information, it's encoding the input signal, and then it's coming to some sort of decision. And what algebraic topology enables us to do is to describe that encoding process.
And so, see, we come back to the understanding that this entire realm is an encoded system, and that's where a lot of quite brilliant minds come up with the theories like the game theory or the theories that that this is a projection or that we are living in a simulation, a type of virtual reality, right? And it's because outside of this platonic solid reality, we actually are somewhere else. We actually do exist in a space outside of this realm that we perceive in the third dimension. And so, it's amazing work. I'll put the link in, but I don't want to, again, we're a minute 19 in to a 2-minute video, so I don't want to,
and perhaps even to visualize,
have any chance of getting it removed. And so we will come back to the graphics. So when a stimulus was introduced to the virtual brain, the neurons formed subsequently higher dimensions of clicks with spaces or cavities in between them. Again, those spaces being infinite. And so our mind expands into these other dimensions as we gain this infinite space in between these new clicks or these cavities that are in between these new clicks of higher dimensions. And so again, I just think of scripture, man. I must he must increase and I must decrease. And so as that Christ consciousness falls on us, right, as the anointing, the Christos, that's what that is the anointed ones. Look up Messiah, Messiah in Hebrew, and it means anointed ones, more times than it does it's referring to one Messiah. And so we are all anointed ones. I am the Messiah as the Christ rises in me, and you are the Messiah as well. As you gain that anointing and the Christos rises in you, and you know the truth and you are set free by the truth, you ascend to these higher realms, and you're able to visit these higher realms via dreams and astral projection and just meditation and prayer, connecting with source, closing your eyes, feeling your heart. Literally just close your eyes and tap on your heart. Put your hand on your heart, put a fingertip on your heart, and breathe. And take a pause in between your inhale and your exhale. And when you just pause and you find rest and you don't allow yourself to be controlled by all of the propaganda that's been put out, all of the fear that's being propagated today in mainstream media and movies, and even especially on YouTube and Facebook, we see it like mad. Like, okay, the world is ending. The world, no, 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 no. A new world is coming. A new world is here. Heaven on earth. That's what Christ said, right? A new heaven and a new earth, because the old one will pass away. And we see it passing away now as these new dimensions are being manifest here. And so, family, you got to understand that as things continue to progress and we hit that point of critical mass where people hit that conscious point of almost instant manifestation, I mean, we're already seeing the heart being manifest, the heart condition being manifest in the world today. That's why it seems like everything is falling apart, because these structures are falling apart. And so when it, back to the article, Levi noted that this activity of forming high dimensional holes in the brain tissue when the brain was working on processing data meant that the neurons were reacting to the stimulus in a highly defined manner. The brain seems to construct and demolish structures of multidimensional units in response to the stimuli, going progressively from simple structures of 1D, imagine rods, to 2D, to 3D, to more and more complex structures of higher dimensions of up to 7D. Again, and I've seen and heard, and hey, Beyond Earth Knowledge, I'm glad you could join us. Some pretty amazing information thus far, and we're going to get into it deep. And so I encourage you to stick with us through this and through the end, and then go back and watch what you did miss, because there's some really, really pertinent information in that we've already covered. And so so the brain seems to construct and demolish structures of multidimensional units in response to the stimuli, going progressively from simple structures of 1D, imagine rods, to 2D, to 3D, to more and more complex structures of higher dimensions of up to 7D. And again, like I was saying, I get distracted by the chat, but in much of my research and many of the much of the other research I've researched, that expands up to this 11th and 12th dimension, and that's just that we know of right now. What is the human mind capable of? What is the spirit in us capable of if we are from source? What is it capable of here, right now, in this realm? I think, again, just going back to like Buddhist monks and these dudes that go up in the monastery and really go in hard and know the inner workings of the heart and the chakra system, and begin to manifest. Like they can levitate objects. I'm gonna have to do a stream where I show some footage where there's even, I mean, back in the 50s and 60s, there were experimenting with Russian housewives, and I know that there's American footage as well of these, young men and women. There, one in particular, this young housewife moving objects. This young woman moving objects, and she wasn't some what people would call mystic or a witch or anything. She just was able to unlock these things. Even and a lot of times, many of these people who have these telekinetic powers don't even know how they unlock it. They just have a way of um, understanding how to move that energy. And so these are the gifts that we've been given. But the back to the article, the progression is comparable to sandcastles of various levels and outcroppings, only for it all to fall apart at the next wave. And so as we build these structures, right, we build this simple little castle that's like the bucket, just a simple bucket with the, I love those buckets that have the little notches already on top and make it look like a castle and make it but you go from that to these amazing structures, right? If you've seen the sand build competitions where they make these amazing structures, these huge art structures, and they could be castles, they could be cities, they could be people, but they make these wonderful, amazing structures out of sand just for the waves to come in and wash them over, and then they do it over again next year, right? Well, that's what your brain is constantly doing when you're allowing new information that's being presented, when you're allowing it to process and you're working through it and you're processing it analytically and you're actually reasoning through it, using the heart brain connection, and even going into meditation or prayer closet or whatever you want to deem it, but closing your eyes and connecting with source, gaining that greater understanding of the workings of all of these things that are being presented to you and how they apply to your life right now, then you'll be given the answers that you're looking for, right? Keep asking. You'll be given the answer. Keep knocking, and the door is going to be open. Keep seeking, and you will find. Because as these waves come in, that's what it can feel like you're drowning by this new information, by these downloads, right? By this this information that you know is ringing true and resonating with you. You just can't really grasp onto it, man, because it just seems so far out there. It just seems so taboo, and it just seems so against everything that you've ever been taught or learned, right? And so allow your mind to be challenged and reason through these things, and you'll have greater and greater structures built. Your whole beach will be kingdoms. Christ said, I go and prepare a place for you. We're coming home to that place right now. That's what we're doing. We're entering the place that Christ prepared for us. When we have these neural linkings of understanding, of knowing the gnosis that's been hidden from us, that rings true on a genetic level. It's amazing, family. It's amazing. And this is the thing where God really moved me away from bashing the church and judging Christians for being hypocritical, and showed me, dude, you still got that plank sticking out of your eye. You're still doing the same things that you're calling these people out for doing. My children, your brothers and sisters, dude, love them. What did Christ say to Peter? Feed my sheep, tend to my sheep, feed them. And so now, even as a believer in Christ, as one who reads the Bible, if you're watching this, my hope and my affirmation would be that you would receive this, and that you would understand the truth in these things, and that it wouldn't be New Age heresy, the first thing that our programming sends us to. Because I love you, family. That's why I do this. That's why I did it when I was in the church, when I was being raised up in the pastorate. That's why I did it. And I love them brothers, man. I love them brothers. People think that I got a hate for the church and a hate for the pastors and the leadership. I don't, man. I love them dudes. I love each and every one of them like a brother. I weep because of the broken relationships and coming into this gnosis. But I also rejoice because I know that they're going to know. That they're going to know. That they're going to know what is true and what is not. All the falsities, all the deceptions, they're all going to go away. And they are. They are right now. The love of the source energy, creator, God, whatever you want to call it, our Father, the one who loves unendingly, is joining us with our mother in this creation. And you know, we're being made to seem that everything is just going to hell in a handbasket and the transhumanism. And I was on that wave as well, family. But those sandcastles have been washing away with every new information and wave of light, the light that is love from source, directly from source, is knocking all of them structures down and rebuilding this beautiful thing, right? That God says, I do a new work in your midst and you don't perceive it. But family, that point of critical mass is right around the corner and everybody's going to perceive it. And so, again, you might look at some of my uh, older, like way older content and see your Grand Rising, Tanya. Thank you for joining. And I see Jim in the chat. Thanks for joining, Jim. Love you, buddy. Um, but yeah, man, all these structures are falling apart. And it can seem like the wave hitting you and crashing over you. It can seem like you're drowning when this information hits, when these revelations come. And you see the way that it is, it's not just destroying the structures of the thought forms, but also the relationships. And Christ said, do you think that I came to bring peace? No, hell no. I came to bring a sword that divides. Father from son, mother from daughter. And it can literally rip families apart. That's why I'm so grateful that my family's made it through this. I mean, it can be such a rough ride coming into this new information and connecting these dots, right? Building up these structures only to have the waves knock them down. But see, we've only been building sandcastles for so long, baby. We're not building sandcastles anymore. Now we're building firm structures on a firm foundation, the cornerstone, the Christos, the cornerstone that is in us, the cornerstone that is in each and every one of us. That's one of the things in one of the Bob Marley songs I listen to. He says, don't leave another cornerstone standing there behind. We ain't leaving anybody behind this time. Never had in the first place. Time is not linear as we would perceive it to be. And when you step outside of that and live in the eternal now, as Christ taught to take that narrow way and observe the things around you, the people around you, and share that light of the Father, not judging, but going and sinning no more. How do you do that? Quit judging, family. Quit judging. The next part of his research for this team, the next part of this research will focus on the practical role of these constructions occurring within the brain. When attempting to understand how the mind creates and stores memories, the spaces within these clicks may also offer a clue. As Markham puts it, data may be hiding in these cavities. And I would say that, yeah, there's tons of data. Tons of data. Yeah, hey, Tanya, I'm glad that you're able to join. Um, and if you can, just go back and watch the replay after we finish up the show, because it'll really connect some dots. A lot of great information here for us to just really consider and to mull over. And so that moves us on to biophotonic light and the way that these new synapses and these new structures are made, and the way that they're built, the way that we can take our power back, the way that we can bring about a new heaven and a new earth, the way that we become the Messiah or the Anointed One, and have that understanding of how love prevails over all things. Love covers a multitude of sin. And by the way, sin is just missing the mark, which is what we all do. We all miss the mark. And so don't judge another cornerstone, because you might be judging Christ himself. It says somewhere in scripture that all of the things that are cast upon me, all of the reviling and all of that negativity and all of the every lashing, man, it really just falls on the shoulders of Christ. And so have that compassion of Christ. Have that grace and that forgiveness of Christ. Love those who don't love you. Love your enemy, as he said. Somebody desires your cloak, you give them your tunic. If they compel you to go 1 mile, go 2. And I would say go 10. Go to the end with them. There is a lot to be said about dusting off the boots and allowing your peace to return unto you, because we cannot be. Scripture says that a man who controls his spirit is mightier than the one who conquers a city, right? And so we have to be in control of this flesh, of this beast suit, and be in the spirit at all times. And so we're going to talk about biophotons in the brain, and the fact that scientists really have been hinting at the link between these biophotons and consciousness, the way that they're directly linked between light, right? Light directly links these things. And so we can look at just a brief overview, the facts here. Scientists have discovered, I am way off on my visuals. No, those are from a previous episode. Again, thank you for bearing with me, because I am still getting the hang of this screen sharing. And so scientists have discovered the presence of biophotons in the brain. This suggests there could be a relationship between biophotons and consciousness. And so we do really need to reflect on these things. Does consciousness originate from inside the brain? Like, we just read an article that talks about these neural connections, right? And the way that it allows new information to flow, but at the same time it creates these cavities, which, again, science has shown that there is an infinite measurement of space. It's an infinite, unmeasurable amount of space in between these structures, these neural structures. And so, again, it's a paradox, but we got to ask ourselves: are we simply a brain, a piece of tissue, inside of a skull, a bone structure? Are we simply a meat suit, or are we something much greater? Family, I say we're something much greater. We are sons and daughters of the Most High. It says in Scripture, I love that meat modem. That is hilarious. Um, I got to remember that one. I was trying to remember that the other day when I was typing something out on Facebook about the meat suit and meat modem. That's just so great because um, the neural system is like a computer system, and so we are literally a meat modem. I love that. But family, we're so much more than we could ever think or even imagine. We're definitely so much more than we've ever been taught or told. Like we're told as children, right? You can be anything growing up. You can be anything growing up. And so uh, as we start to grow up, then we get put in a smaller and smaller tunnel. It's almost like a funnel, right? The funnel is really big at the top, but at the end, you got this little tiny hole and nothing can fit through. And that is a paradox as well, because we see that on in the system, in the matrix system, how we're being funneled, mankind is being funneled towards this singularity of transhumanism and artificial intelligence and I mean a time of cyborgs, right? And so just the transhumanist agenda is very real. I'll do a show regarding that very soon. Actually, going over the research that I've done for this show, I was finding some research I did with neural linking and AI and really where we're at with that in our time. But I'll digress because I want to stay on topic here. So, scientists found that neurons in mammalian brains were capable of producing photons of light or biophotons. That's a trip, right? The photons, strangely enough, appear within the visible spectrum. And so, again, I've touched on the electromagnetic spectrum, how we only perceive one octave, and that is amazing when you understand the ability of the human senses and the way that they can be manipulated. My family and I went to a display at the museum not too long ago that was really showing how the senses can be manipulated and how they are. This is being done through advertising and again through TV, through mainstream media, through the music we listen to, through everything that we absorb. It's all a social programming system, and we've got to reprogram the meat modem. And yes, we do transpond and receive frequencies. And check this out, Beyond Earth Knowledge, Shoshana, everybody in the chat, everybody who's watching. I'm definitely going to do a show on this regarding the science behind crystals and the difference, the way that these platonic solids are formed, the way that atoms and the subatomic particles in the atoms all vibrated at a specific frequencies, right? And different frequencies. And this is what makes up the different structures that are in this realm. And so this all came about by doing some research regarding crystals. I've got a dear brother, man, his whole family, this family is just freaking geniuses, man. I love them. I love this family, and they've got, I know the parents from serving in church with them, and their kids are freaking geniuses. I had some of their kids in the youth ministry, and they are geniuses. And he really, I know that he wasn't probably intending to, maybe in a sideways manner, really threw a dig at me regarding crystals and believing in the healing powers of crystals. And I touched a little bit on timepieces. Actually, maybe he touched on the fact that these silicate crystals, crystalline structures, are used in every piece of timekeeping and computers today. But one thing that he fails to see, or maybe he didn't fail to see, but just definitely failed to mention, is that our even the structure of our plasma and our blood carries a silica crystallate structure in it. And so everything in this realm consists of crystals, of crystalline structures. And again, that's for another video. I think I've already gone into that a little bit too far, but I've got some amazing research on that. And so this is one thing about me is I've got the kind of brain that I have to process these things, and I really have to see and even in some cases get really hands-on. That's how I learned all of my construction skills and all of the mechanic skills, the things that I know today. Very hands-on, but I'm also very analytical, and so we can't let the analytical mind run away and just completely diffuse any sense of discernment via the emotional, I mean, the spiritual aspect of the emotion state, right? And so we have to combine the heart and the mind to be able to work and reason through these things in the way that Christ instructed us to, in the way that the Creator wants us to, desires us to, right? He's given us this ability, and so this is what we do. And so, okay, back on topic. The photons, strangely enough, appear within the visible spectrum. They range from near infrared through violet, or between 200 and 1300 nanometers. Scientists have an exciting suspicion that our brain's neurons might be able to communicate through light. And that's another future episode. I've got some research about the way that the human brain communicates via the frequencies that were mentioned, right? And so this is something that, people think that hippies are weird when they're like, man, that dude's got a bad vibe. But you know what? There's a lot of that's so legitimate. There's so much legitimacy to those kind of statements. And I even have a sister in the church that was bashing, I don't know what it is. There's weird stuff about vibes and stuff like that. Well, you know what? When you're praying, that's what you're doing, is you're putting out vibrational frequencies into the ether, which is the Creator, which the Creator consists of all things. All things come from God, right? And so all things are God's. And so we got to understand these things, man, before we start calling something good evil and calling evil good. Even being careful not to eat from that tree of knowledge of good and evil, but taking that narrow way of non-judgment or rather self-judgment, right? That we would judge ourselves and forgive ourselves and heal ourselves, right? Christ said, "Physician, heal yourself." And so they suspect that our brain might have optical communication channels, but they have no idea what could be communicated. Even more exciting, they claim that if there is an optical communication happening, the biophotons our brains produce might be affected by quantum entanglement, meaning there can be a strong link between these photons, our consciousness, and possibly what many cultures and religions refer to as spirit. You think? I would say yes. Spot on. And I again, so much information to put out there. I was trying to do daily shows, but sometimes these things, when they get into the 2-hour range, it's a little difficult to hop on here every day for 2 hours. But again, important information. I'm gonna bring it to you as often as I can and to the best of my ability. And so I have probably 3 or 4 shows set aside for quantum entanglement and quantum tunneling. And so, and the link between love and quantum entanglement, that's going to be a really good one. And so we need to really consider these things. In a couple of experiments, scientists discovered that rat brains can pass just 1 biophoton per neuron a minute, but human brains could convey more than 1 billion biophotons per second. This raises the question, could it be possible that the more light one can produce and communicate between neurons, the more conscious they are? If there is any correlation, sorry, I lost my place. If there is any correlation between biophotons, light, and consciousness, it can have strong implications that there is more to light than we are aware of. Just think for a moment. Many texts and religions dating way back since the dawn of human civilization have reported of saints, ascended beings, and enlightened individuals having shining circles around their heads. From ancient Greece and ancient Rome to teachings of Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity, among many other religions, sacred individuals were depicted with a shining circle, that halo, right, in the form of a circular glow around their heads. And so, I'm going to tell you right now, you can see when somebody's in that anointing. I mean, I used to get told that in church, like I'd have people stop me occasionally and even pull me to the side and just, hey man, you're glowing, man, you're glowing. You just have this light about you, this light around your face, around your head. Your skin looks tight, you look 10 years younger, you just look different, you're glowing. And so I would dare to say that this is what was going on, as again, these connections, these neural highways are made, and you're learning new information, you're absorbing truth is what it boils down to, and rejecting the lie, you become more and more enlightened with the gnosis of God inside of you. And so maybe these individuals produced a higher level of biophotons with stronger intensity because of their enlightenment. If there is any correlation between biophotons and consciousness, I would say yes. Again, even the word enlightenment suggests that this higher consciousness has something to do with light. And we know, I am the light of the world, right? You are the light of the world. Don't put the light under a basket. Like, there's so much that we've been told about the light of the world and being the light of the world, and just shining the light of God into the world. Like, all of these things, man. One of the most exciting implications that this discovery that our brains can produce light gives is that maybe our consciousness and spirit are not contained within our bodies. This implication is completely overlooked by scientists. And so this comes back to those neural connections and the infinite space in between them, that we are not limited to this meat modem and this structure. This computer was a tool that we've been given, that we've been allowed to possess. Again, we look at this realm and we look at it as the powers and principalities, the rulers of this dark age. You know what? We have taskmasters, and sometimes, just like the trials in our life are meant to push us towards a greater understanding of God in us and the power that we have in us. Greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world, right? Maybe there's a reason we're going through the things that we're going through. I know damn sure that it's revealing the heart condition of man right now. And a healing is coming about, family. A healing is here. It's already happened. We're just the light catching up with the sound. And so, quantum entanglement says that two entangled photons react if one of the photons is affected, no matter where the other photon is in the universe, without any delay. One of the videos I'll try and link it here in the description, but go back and look at, I think it's the one right after Sorry Not Sorry, regarding, does emotion really create our reality? And I talk a little bit about that in this research that was done, how photons actually, and even like subatomic particles, and they form to DNA that was in a container that was actually removed from the container. These particulates, these subatomic particles, would form into that same structure as that DNA. They would map it, they would mirror it. And so that's really pointing to that. And there's a lot more. I think it's Schrodinger's cat, and just a lot of other things that we'll cover regarding the topic of quantum entanglement and quantum tunneling, and just quantum theory in general, and quantum science, quantum mathematics, quantum, because we're making a quantum leap in consciousness right now. And so that's very important to cover, family. And so again, quantum entanglement says that two entangled photons react if one of the photons is affected, no matter where the other photon is in the universe, without any delay. I'm actually just going to jump over there because I think that it's that important to cover in this video, that we would look at that again. So just hang tight with me, family. Be patient. I see we've had a few people drop off of the stream, and I know it's a weekday, and so sorry for that as well, family. So this was in a previous video that I did, and it talks about DNA and there being no lag time, right? And so I'm just going to briefly run over this as well. So 3 different studies done by teams of scientists separately proved something really extraordinary. But when a new research connected the 3 discoveries, something shocking was realized, something hiding in plain sight. Human emotion literally shapes the world around us, not just our perception of the world, but the reality itself, the platonic solids that we perceive. In the first experiment, human DNA isolated in a sealed container was placed near a test subject. Scientists gave the donor emotional stimulus, and fascinatingly enough, the emotions affected their DNA in the other room. In the presence of negative emotions, the DNA tightened, and so it coiled up, right? And that restricts, I believe, it restricts the the linking of those lost DNA strands, and so it prevents that from happening. In the presence of positive emotions, the coils of the DNA relaxed. The scientists concluded that the human emotion produces effects which defy conventional laws of physics. In the second test, similar but unrelated experiment, different groups of scientists extracted leukocytes, white blood cells, from donors and placed into chambers so they could measure electrical changes. In this experiment, the donor was placed in one room and subjected to emotional stimulation consisting of video clips, which generated different emotions in the donor. The DNA was placed in a different room in the same building. Both the donor and his DNA were monitored, and as the donor exhibited emotional peaks or valleys measured by electrical responses, the DNA exhibited identical responses at the same exact time. There was no lag time, no transmission time at all. The DNA peaks and valleys exactly matched the peaks and valleys of the donor in time. The scientists wanted to see how far away they could separate the donor from his DNA and still get this effect. They stopped testing after they separated the DNA and the donor by 50 miles and still had the same result. No lag time, no transmission time. The DNA and the donor had the same identical responses in time. The conclusion was that the donor and the DNA can communicate beyond space and time. That's pretty amazing, right? But check this out. The third experiment proved something pretty shocking. Scientists observed the effect of DNA on our physical world. And this is where it comes back to the photons, light photons, right? We're talking about biophotonic light being produced in our brain, in the neural networks of our brain, right? And so scientists observed the effect of DNA on our physical world. Light photons, which make up the world around us, were observed inside of a vacuum. Their natural locations were completely random. Human DNA was inserted into the vacuum. Shockingly, the photons were no longer acting random. They precisely followed the geometry of the DNA. Scientists who were studying this described the photons behaving surprisingly and counterintuitively. They went on to say that we are forced to accept the possibility of some new field of energy. They concluded that human DNA literally shaped the behavior of light photons that make up the world around us. So, when a new research was done and all of these three scientific claims were connected together, the scientists were shocked. They came to a stunning realization that if our emotions affect our DNA and our DNA shapes the world around us, then our emotions physically change the world around us. And not just that, we are connected to our DNA beyond space and time, family. Well, that's exactly it. This transcends space and time. And that's where scientists are having their minds blown in figuring out things that we've already been given supernaturally, right? Like the creators revealed so much of this to people like you and I beyond Earth knowledge, and science is finally catching up. And so we create our reality by choosing it with our feelings. And science has already proven some pretty mind blowing facts about the universe that we all live in. All we have to do is connect the dots to all of these things, right? And so as we connect these dots, we see that um, maybe there's a world that exists within the light. No matter where you are, no matter where you are in the universe, photons can act as portals that enable communication beyond these two worlds. And so you, family, are a portal to other dimensions, higher realms. How do we access those higher realms, family? I've talked about that. Let's have a heart of gratitude. Let's come up from a place of love, a place of forgiveness. Ha'apono ono ono. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Affirmations. I am affirmations. I am worthy. I am enough. I am capable. I am abundant. I am love. I am light. Because, family, you are light. You are the light of this world. It just blows my mind, family. It blows my mind. We are the light of this world. And you are a wormhole into other realms. Family, you transcend this physical platonic realm, this three-dimensional realm, and our DNA is being changed. I know the video that I put out, I'm not gonna lie, I thought about deleting it, the one that I talked about us shifting from 3D to 5D consciousness, and in that our bodies are changing as well to a higher crystalline structure, leaving the carbon base behind, making us lighter, beings of light, less dense. No longer, the light is no longer going to be hidden by these meat modems. These meat modems are going to be upgraded. They are being upgraded right now, and the DNA is being changed. And that's why we see all of the fear being propagated through the system through the matrix system, because it doesn't want that change. It doesn't want that um, that critical mass being reached of the light being shined on a quantum level throughout all of creation. But it's already happening. It's already happened again. We're just catching up. We're just catching up. I know it. That's why I say beyond earth knowledge. That's why I say, everybody calls me new age and says I'm dangerous and I'm just part of new. No, you know what? The new age religion that is being propagated by the matrix system is dangerous because it gives a false light and it keeps you trapped in this matrix system when you think that you can only ascend to a certain level, right? That's why I want to bring this information that we transcend even the fifth dimension. We're not to be just stuck in the fifth dimension. Okay, that might be a new realm, but family, we can go beyond that. There is no limitation for us at all. The only limitation that we have on us is the limitations that we put on ourselves through the thought forms that we allow to control our emotions and create the reality that many of us call hell on earth. Well, guess what, family? That bliss on earth is available for you. Go within and know thyself, and you will find peace that transcends, that goes beyond all understanding. The universe, let me see, where was I at? Maybe there is a world that exists within light, and no matter where you are in the universe, photons can act as portals that enable communication between these two worlds. Maybe our spirit and consciousness communicate with our bodies through these biophotons, and the more light we produce, the more we awaken and embody the wholeness of our consciousness. Yes, yes, and yes, and yes, some more. Yes, 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 yes. This can explain the phenomena of why the state of a photon is affected simply by consciously observing it, as it is proven in many quantum experiments. Maybe our observation communicates something through our biophotons with the photon that is being observed in a similar fashion as quantum entanglement light. Like light is just one unified substance that is scattered throughout our universe and affected through each light particle. Oh, Creator, thank you. You are great. You are amazing. You are wonderful, because that is what many of us have been saying. Many of us have been saying we are connected to Source. We are Source. We are of Source. I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. The Father and I are one. I can do nothing apart from Him. We need not fear anything. Atomic energy, nothing. We are atomic energy. We are the creators. We are the wormholes. We are the colliders. We are all. And all is us. What are you projecting, family? What are you allowing in your space that would manipulate and form, that would shape these realities that affect the entire collective? You know, as we get closer and closer to understanding the truth of what consciousness is, where it comes from, what the mysteries are that are hidden within that light, the mysteries that are hidden within each and every one of us. We become more connected. And so I want to thank y'all for joining me. That is really what I wanted to cover today, family. You are the light of the world, and we are capable of accessing multiple dimensions. And so hold on to that. I want to thank y'all. I've got audio here, Freedom Fighter. Hey, I appreciate you listening. Rick, thank you guys for joining. I'm not going to go through the chat today. I'm just going to jump off of here and just wish you guys nothing but wholeness and balanced vibrations. Be the light. Be the light. Love, forgive. Go within and know thyself before you react. Know your thought forms and rule over them. Thank you guys for being active in the chat, and I'll catch you guys here in a couple of days, probably. Maybe tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe I'll do another broadcast tonight. But I love you guys. Wholeness and balance. Aho.